There are objects in this world that seem ordinary on the surface, but within them lies a darkness that defies explanation. They are not simply things, they are vessels. Containers for energy, for grief, for rage, and sometimes for something far more sinister. One of the most infamous of these objects is a doll. Not porcelain, not lifelike in the way Hollywood would later imagine it, but a simple cloth Raggedy Ann doll. Bright red yarn hair, a stitched smile, and soft fabric limbs. Something that should have brought comfort. Something that should have been innocent. But this doll became Annabelle. And her story is one of the most chilling tales in modern American folklore. It began in 1970, in a small apartment shared by two young women. Donna, a nursing student, was turning 28. For her birthday, her mother gave her a gift she thought would brighten the little home. A vintage Raggedy Ann doll, purchased from a hobby store. Donna laughed when she saw it. She was no child, but the doll reminded her of home, of simpler days, of something soft and comforting in the midst of the long nights and stress of nursing school. She placed the doll on her bed, propping it up against her pillows. At first it was nothing more than decoration. A sweet, silly birthday gift. But soon the atmosphere in the apartment began to shift. At first it was small, subtle, hardly worth noticing. Donna would leave the doll on her bed before going to work. When she returned, the doll's position had changed. Sometimes its legs were crossed. Sometimes its arms were in a different place. Once, its head was turned to face the window. Her roommate Angie dismissed it as Donna's imagination. "You probably moved it without realizing," she said. "You're tired. Long shifts will do that." But Donna insisted she hadn't. Then the changes grew bolder. The doll appeared in different rooms altogether. Once, Donna left it on her bed before class and returned to find it sitting in the living room. Its head slumped against the couch as though it had been waiting for her. Another time, Angie swore she had left the doll in Donna's room, only to find it in the kitchen when she came home. The women laughed nervously, blaming each other, blaming forgetfulness, blaming anything but the impossible. But inside, unease began to creep in. Then came the notes. One evening, Donna returned home to find a piece of parchment paper on the floor. On it, written in crude, childlike handwriting, were two words: "Help us." She showed it to Angie, who frowned. "Where did you get this?" "I don't know," Donna whispered. "It was just here." Neither of them kept parchment paper in the house. Neither recognized the handwriting. Over the next several days, more notes appeared. Sometimes they read, "Help Lou," Lou being Donna's fiancé, who occasionally visited the apartment. Other times, simply "Help me." The notes were always written in the same crude hand, always on paper that no one in the apartment owned, and always left where they would be found, as if deliberately placed. By now, the women were uneasy. What had begun as a curiosity was turning into something darker. The doll seemed to radiate a strange energy. Friends who visited said they felt uncomfortable around it. Lou especially despised it. He warned Donna that something was wrong. "I don't like that doll," he said one night. "There's something off about it. You should get rid of it." Donna resisted. "It was just a doll," she said. But even she admitted she felt watched sometimes, as though the doll's stitched eyes followed her across the room. At night, the apartment felt different. The air grew heavier, thicker, colder. Shadows seemed to gather in corners. Both women admitted to waking in the night and feeling as though someone, or something, was in the room with them. Then came the blood. One evening, Donna returned home to find the doll sitting on her bed, its hands smeared with a red substance. Drops of it marked the fabric of its chest, staining the cloth like wounds. Terrified, Donna touched the substance. It was sticky. It smelled like iron. It looked like blood. There was no explanation, no cuts, no accidents, no spilled food or drink. Nothing in the apartment could account for it. The doll had simply produced it. That night, Donna and Angie admitted what they had tried to deny. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Desperate for answers, they contacted a local medium. A séance was arranged in the apartment, the doll sitting silently in the circle as candles burned low. The medium closed her eyes and began to speak. "There is a spirit here," she whispered. "A child. A girl named Annabelle Higgins." The women listened, shivering as the medium described the girl. 7 years old, lonely, lost. She had died in the field where the apartment complex now stood. Her spirit, the medium said, had wandered, and when Donna received the doll, Annabelle latched onto it. She is lonely, the medium said. She wants love. She wants to stay. She wants to be cared for. Donna, moved by sympathy, agreed. She can stay, she whispered. If she needs us, she can stay, the medium smiled. Then she will remain. But what Donna and Angie did not realize was that what they had invited was not a child. It was something else entirely. Something that had deceived them. From that moment, the activity escalated. The doll moved more frequently, sometimes appearing in positions that were disturbing rather than playful. Its head tilted as though listening, its arms stretched as though reaching. The notes continued. The air grew colder. The shadows grew darker. And Lou, Donna's fiancé, began to have nightmares. He dreamed of the doll climbing onto his chest, pinning him down, choking him. He woke in terror, gasping for air, swearing he felt invisible hands pressing against his throat. He begged Donna again to get rid of it. But Donna, still clinging to the story of a lost child in need of love, refused. What she had done, unknowingly, was give permission. Permission for the entity to remain. Permission for it to grow stronger. The story of Annabelle was only beginning. The doll was not simply haunted. It was a vessel, and now, having been invited, the darkness within was free to make itself known. What Donna thought was a lonely child was, in fact, something far more dangerous. Something that would soon reveal its true nature, in violence, in terror, and in blood. The invitation had been given. Whether Donna and Angie realized it or not, the moment they allowed the supposed spirit of Annabelle Higgins to stay, the entity had been granted permission. And once the door is opened, it cannot easily be closed. The apartment that had once felt warm and welcoming now seemed heavy, as though an unseen fog had seeped into its walls. The doll that once made them laugh now filled the space with dread, and the darkness wasted no time revealing itself. Lou, Donna's fiancé, had been uneasy from the beginning. Unlike Donna and Angie, he never accepted the medium's story of a lonely child spirit. He felt it was a deception, and he made his feelings known. "I don't like it," he said bluntly one night, staring at the doll propped on the couch. Its red yarn hair and stitched smile seemed grotesque in the dim light. "You're feeding into it. You're giving it power," Donna frowned. "It's just a child," she said. "She's lonely. She's harmless." Lou shook his head. "That's not a child. It's something pretending to be one. And if you don't get rid of it, it's going to hurt you." Donna dismissed him. But his words hung in the air like a prophecy. The first real attack came in Lou's dreams. One night, as he slept on the couch, he woke to the sense of movement. His eyes opened, and there, in the dark, he saw Annabelle. The doll climbed slowly onto his legs, then his chest, its soft fabric limbs somehow heavy as stone. He tried to move, but his body was frozen. He could not breathe. He could not scream. The doll's stitched smile loomed above him. Its hands pressed into his throat. Lou gasped, certain he was suffocating. And then, just as suddenly, he woke. The doll was across the room, sitting where Donna had left it. His chest burned. His throat ached. It had been a dream, he told himself. But it felt too real. The next morning, faint scratches appeared on his skin. Days later, Lou returned to the apartment while Donna and Angie were out. As he entered, he heard shuffling in one of the bedrooms. Thinking it was an intruder, he moved cautiously, checking each room. When he entered Donna's room, he froze. Annabelle sat in the corner, motionless, facing him. Then, before his eyes, the doll seemed to shift. Its head tilted, its arms stretched, and the room grew ice cold. Lou staggered back, but before he could move further, something invisible struck him. He cried out as searing pain cut across his chest. He stumbled to a mirror and pulled open his shirt. Across his skin were 7 deep claw marks, 3 vertical, 4 horizontal, as if slashed by a wild animal. The wounds burned, they bled. Yet within 2 days they healed completely, leaving no scar. It was not the wound that terrified Lou. It was the message. Something inside the doll had marked him. It was a warning. By now even Donna began to doubt the medium's story. The doll's behavior was no longer innocent or playful. It was violent, malicious. The sympathy she once felt for Annabelle Higgins was now clouded by fear. Angie admitted she no longer slept through the night. "I hear it," she whispered one evening. "Moving. When the lights are out, I hear it." Donna tried to stay rational, but deep inside she felt it too. The presence was no longer subtle. It was oppressive. Something was inside their home, and it was no child. Terrified, Donna and Angie turned to their last resort, the church. They contacted an Episcopal priest named Father Hegan. After hearing their story, he was disturbed but not fully convinced. He agreed to investigate and brought in another priest, Father Cook. When Father Cook heard the details, the doll's movements, the notes, the scratches, the attacks, he knew this was not ordinary. He referred the case to the people he believed were best equipped to handle it, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were already becoming known across America as investigators of the paranormal. Ed, a demonologist, and Lorraine, a clairvoyant, had dedicated their lives to confronting what most people feared, even to speak of, and when they heard the name Annabelle, they knew at once that this was no simple haunting. When the Warrens entered the apartment, Lorraine later said the darkness was palpable. She felt it immediately, a heaviness, a malicious intelligence that seemed to watch them from the shadows. The doll sat in the corner, limp and harmless in appearance, but Lorraine would later describe it as radiating something she could only call inhuman. Ed listened carefully as Donna, Angie, and Lou told their story. When they mentioned the medium's claim of a child named Annabelle Higgins, he shook his head. "That was never a child," Ed said firmly. "It was a lie. A spirit cannot inhabit an inanimate object. But something inhuman can use an object as a conduit. What you have invited into this apartment is not the ghost of a little girl. It is a demon." The Warrens explained what had happened. The entity had posed as a child to win sympathy. By allowing it to stay, Donna had given it permission. Now it had grown stronger, moving the doll, leaving notes, inflicting harm. Its goal was not to frighten, but to possess. First the apartment, then Donna herself. The scratches on Lou were not random. They were part of a ritual of domination, a way of breaking down resistance. The entity wanted fear. Fear fed it. The Warrens knew the doll had to be removed. But first, they asked Father Cook to perform a blessing of the apartment. As the priest walked through each room, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers, Lorraine said the doll seemed to tremble. Not physically, but energetically, as though the thing inside it was enraged. When the blessing was complete, the apartment felt lighter. But Ed knew it was only temporary. The doll could not stay. Ed and Lorraine Warren took the doll with them, carefully placing it in the back seat of their car. Lorraine prayed softly as Ed drove, both of them tense. Ed later reported that the drive home was one of the most harrowing of his life. Each time he turned sharply, the car stalled. The brakes failed more than once, nearly causing accidents. Only after sprinkling the doll with holy water did the disturbances stop. By the time they reached their home in Monroe, Connecticut, the Warrens knew Annabelle was no ordinary case. She would not be destroyed. That much was clear. Burning or discarding her would only free what was inside. So instead, she would be contained. In the basement of their home, Ed and Lorraine kept a collection of items taken from cases they had investigated, cursed objects, haunted relics, things too dangerous to leave in the world. There, Annabelle was placed in a specially made wooden case lined with glass and marked with a cross. A sign was added, warning, "Positively do not open." The Warrens knew this was not the end of Annabelle's story. It was only containment. The thing inside her was patient, eternal, and it would not rest. Annabelle had left Donna and Angie's apartment, but she had not been defeated. She had only changed homes. Now she resided in the custody of two of the most famous and controversial paranormal investigators of the 20th century, Ed and Lorraine Warren. For them, Annabelle was not merely a haunted object. She was a warning, a reminder of the dangers that come when curiosity and compassion open doors that should remain closed. And in the years that followed, the Warrens would come to understand just how dangerous this doll could be. By the time Annabelle entered their lives, Ed and Lorraine Warren were already known across the United States. Ed, a former Navy man turned self-taught demonologist, carried himself with the seriousness of a soldier. Lorraine, soft-spoken and deeply religious, described herself as clairvoyant, able to sense and sometimes see the presence of spirits. Together they had investigated hundreds of cases, from simple hauntings to claims of demonic possession. To skeptics, they were frauds, capitalizing on fear. To believers, they were warriors against darkness, chosen to confront forces others dared not acknowledge. Annabelle, however, was unlike anything else they had encountered. The Warrens' first encounter with Annabelle's power came not in a haunted house, but in their own car. As they drove the doll home from Donna's apartment, Ed reported that the vehicle's brakes failed multiple times. The steering locked unexpectedly, nearly causing collisions. At one point, the engine died altogether. Only after Ed sprinkled holy water on the doll and recited prayers did the disturbances stop. To the Warrens, it was confirmation. Annabelle was not simply an object carrying residual energy. She was a conduit, controlled by something with intelligence, patience, and malice. Once Annabelle was secured in the Warrens' home, Lorraine began to experience strange visions. She described seeing a dark, shifting presence hovering near the doll, like smoke given form. At night, she dreamed of figures whispering in her ear, warning her that the doll was only a vessel. The true danger was the inhuman entity within. Ed, too, reported hearing knocks in the night, always in patterns of 3, a mockery of the Holy Trinity, a sign of demonic activity. The Warrens prayed constantly, surrounding the doll with relics of faith, crucifixes, rosaries, holy water. But they knew this was not enough. The entity was bound, but it was not dormant. One of the most infamous incidents with Annabelle came not from the Warrens themselves, but from a visitor. A young man and his girlfriend toured the Warrens Museum of Occult Objects. The man, laughing, banged on Annabelle's glass case. "If you're real," he taunted, "prove it. Scratch me, like you scratched Lou." Ed immediately intervened, his face pale with anger. He escorted the couple out, warning them never to mock the doll. On their way home, the young man lost control of his motorcycle. He crashed into a tree and died instantly. His girlfriend survived, but later told the Warrens that they had been laughing about Annabelle at the very moment the accident occurred. For the Warrens, it was not coincidence. It was a warning fulfilled. Not long after Annabelle was secured in her case, a young priest visited the Warrens. He scoffed at the stories, dismissing them as superstition. "Father," Ed said, "do not underestimate this doll. She is dangerous." The priest laughed and tapped the glass case. "You are just a doll. You cannot hurt anyone." Ed's expression turned grave. "You should not have said that." On his way home, the priest's car spun out of control. He survived barely, but the accident left him shaken. Later, he admitted to Ed that in the seconds before the crash, he saw Annabelle's face in his rearview mirror. As time passed, Lorraine's connection to Annabelle deepened. She described feeling drained whenever she was near the doll, as if the entity within fed on her energy. At times, she saw visions of blood, of shadows moving through the halls of their home, of a mocking laughter that filled her head. She insisted that Annabelle's true goal was not merely to frighten or harm individuals. The entity wanted to erode faith, to instill despair, to bring chaos into the lives of those who underestimated it, and Annabelle was succeeding. The Warrens began documenting every incident connected to the doll. The motorcycle death, the priest's near-fatal accident, reports from visitors who felt sudden chills, fainting spells, or overwhelming dread when near the case. Phones that malfunctioned whenever calls were made near the doll. Dogs that refused to enter the room, whining and clawing at the floor. Each new entry confirmed what they had feared from the start. Annabelle was not an ordinary haunting. She was a demonic conduit, a tool of something that sought destruction. The Warrens knew Annabelle could not be destroyed. Burning the doll would only release the entity, allowing it to attach to something or someone else. So they created a permanent solution. Ed constructed a special wooden case, lined with protective prayers and glass, and placed Annabelle inside. On the front, he mounted a cross. A sign was added, warning, "Positively do not open." Once sealed, the activity diminished. The doll remained still. The atmosphere grew lighter. But the Warrens knew this was not the end. The entity had not been defeated. It had only been caged. For the Warrens, Annabelle became a symbol of their mission. They believed the world was full of forces beyond human understanding, forces that sought to deceive, corrupt, and destroy. Faith was the only weapon strong enough to resist them. Ed often warned visitors to the museum, "This is not a joke. This is not a toy. This doll is dangerous. If you mock her, if you taunt her, You are inviting something you cannot control. Some listened. Some did not. And for those who didn't, tragedy often followed. Years passed and Annabelle remained in her case, silent and still. But the stories never stopped. Staff at the museum reported feeling watched when cleaning near her. Visitors swore her head tilted slightly, or that her eyes followed them across the room. Some even claimed they heard tapping on the glass, as though something inside was trying to get out. To skeptics, it was imagination. To believers, it was proof that the demon within was still awake, still waiting, still patient, because a demon does not die, a demon does not fade. A demon waits, and Annabelle was waiting. Annabelle sat inside her glass and wooden case, locked away in the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. The sign outside her prison read, "Warning, positively do not open." For decades, she remained there, silent, but never forgotten. The Warrens had placed her among hundreds of cursed artifacts, mirrors said to trap souls, satanic idols, relics from exorcisms. Yet none drew as much fear, fascination, or infamy as Annabelle, because she was not just an object. She was a story, and stories have power. The Warrens opened their museum not for spectacle, but as a sanctuary of containment. To them, every object within its walls carried a dark history, and Annabelle was the crown jewel, the most dangerous, the most notorious. Visitors walked nervously through the narrow halls, eyes lingering on the doll behind the glass. Many admitted that of all the strange artifacts, Annabelle was the one that made them shiver. Her stitched smile, her wide eyes, her very ordinariness made her terrifying. Because if something so innocent could be a vessel for evil, then nothing was safe. The museum became a pilgrimage site for believers in the paranormal. And with each retelling, each warning, the legend of Annabelle grew. The Warrens recorded dozens of incidents linked to the doll after she was placed in her case. Visitors who mocked her often left with sudden misfortune, car accidents, illnesses, fights. A man who ignored Ed's warnings and tapped the glass collapsed days later from a fatal aneurysm. Staff claimed to hear soft tapping at night, as though Annabelle herself was knocking from within. Lorraine reported dreams of the doll walking freely, its cloth hands leaving trails of blood wherever it went. Every story added to Annabelle's reputation. Every tragedy deepened the fear surrounding her name. By the 1970s and 80s, the Warrens had become household names. Their cases inspired books, documentaries, and eventually blockbuster films. Annabelle, with her stitched smile and innocent form, became one of their most infamous cases. When Hollywood turned to the Warrens' stories for inspiration, Annabelle was among the first chosen. Though the film version reimagined her as a porcelain doll with lifelike features, the core of the story remained. A doll that was not haunted by a child, but manipulated by something far darker. Audiences across the world shivered as Annabelle's legend moved from whispered folklore to the silver screen. In reality, Annabelle remained the simple Raggedy Ann doll locked in her case. But the movies amplified her image into a terrifying icon of horror. For some, the Hollywood version overshadowed the real story. Yet for others, the films only fueled the fascination, sending thousands to research the Warrens, their museum, and the true history of Annabelle. And so the line blurred. The myth and the reality became intertwined. What mattered most was not whether the stories were true, but that people believed them, because belief is power. And Annabelle thrived on belief. After Ed Warren passed away in 2006, Lorraine continued to guard the museum. Visitors noted her deep reverence when speaking of Annabelle. She never joked about the doll, never dismissed the danger. "She's not to be trifled with," Lorraine said in one interview. "That thing inside of her is inhuman. It is patient, it is manipulative, and it will never stop trying to get out." For Lorraine, Annabelle symbolized everything she and Ed had fought against: deception, despair, and the slow erosion of faith. In 2020, rumors swept across social media that Annabelle had escaped from her case. Posts spread like wildfire. The doll was missing. She was free. She was out in the world again. In reality, Annabelle had never left the museum. The story was false. But the speed with which the rumor spread revealed something important. Annabelle was no longer just a cursed doll in a glass box. She had become a global icon of fear. People wanted to believe she was out there. They wanted to believe the nightmare was walking again. Today, Annabelle remains locked away, though the museum itself has faced closures and controversies. Still, the legend endures. Tourists still flock to see her. Paranormal investigators still speak her name in hushed tones. Internet forums buzz with speculation, and horror fans debate whether her story is real or myth. But those who believe in the Warrens' work insist on one truth: Annabelle is no mere story. She is real, and she is dangerous. Annabelle's tale is not only about a doll. It is about deception, a demon masqueraded as a child to gain sympathy, to win entry, to be invited. Once inside, it grew stronger, feeding on fear, violence, and tragedy. The lesson is clear: not every spirit that claims to be innocent is what it seems. Some wear masks. Some use the language of grief and compassion to lure their victims. And once welcomed, they do not easily leave. More than 50 years after she first entered Donna's apartment, Annabelle remains behind glass. Her stitched smile is unchanged. Her button eyes are still wide. She has not moved. She has not spoken, and yet visitors insist they feel her presence. They whisper that she waits. Perhaps Annabelle is not simply a doll. Perhaps she is a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, that innocence can be corrupted, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters wear the simplest masks, because Annabelle is patient. She has all the time in the world, and somewhere behind her glass case, she is still waiting.